And I went home and I metaphorically stuck my head in the sand. You're a designer. And I know that might be weird to some people. It's like, no, I build a spreadsheet. Yeah, well, you're designing a spreadsheet. You're designing a model. You're designing a deck of which to present.
Tell us about a few of the harder moments in that time.
You get thrown together with these people that you don't know. You didn't choose it, but you end up spending more time with them than you do your own friends and family. And they didn't know about the deal, but I also knew I've got a deal and I've got COVID. I'm going to have to replan everything now. The financial plan is now being shifted. So that, I think, is a modern CFO that perhaps wasn't 20 years ago, is you have to be more about storytelling and you have to think about design, because that's what makes the difference.
Tom, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for coming in today and fitting us in before the cricket.
You're very welcome.
Let's start off with your journey. So, how and why did you become a CFO?
It's a good question. And I know very well the moment that, well, certainly I wanted to get into tech. But, back in 2004, I was in my third year of university. I was doing economics. And at that point, I was applying for, I suppose, internships for the summer, knowing that I was going to do a year out traveling afterwards, and I wanted to set something up. I was pretty dead set at that point on going into banking, like a lot of people that do economics. And there I was watching the UK office. It was all three series 1, Series 2, and the Christmas specials. And there was a moment where Martin Freeman, Tim, was narrating, and he said, you get thrown together with these people that you don't know. You didn't choose it, but you end up spending more time with them than you do your own friends and family. But the only thing in common is you share the same bit of carpet that you walk around with 8 hours a day. I remember hearing that and it hit really hard, because I suppose I wanted to have a career I loved. I wanted to be passionate about it, and I didn't want that situation where you were just not happy going into work. But back then you're so young, you don't really know what you want, because you haven't experienced anything yet. But what I did know is that I wasn't passionate about banking, and I would have probably been going into it for the wrong reasons. But I was passionate about tech. I personally was an early adopter of tech. I loved the fact that it was innovative, it was disruptive, it was fast growth. And so I just felt like, and at that point, Google and Facebook were really going, scaling. And I thought this would be a great place to work. So I suppose once I decided tech was the route to go, then it was, well, what route within tech? And the CFO route seemed like the right route. I was an economics graduate. I was, good with numbers, hence why I was thinking about banking anyway. So I went and spoke to my mentor at the time, who had been very successful in business, and I told him, hey, I'm pivoting, big pivot, told him the UK office story. And he said, well, it's an interesting way to pivot, but I see your point. And he said, if that's the route you want to take, go and do chartered accountancy, qualification. But he did warn me I would hate him for making me do that. But I would begin to appreciate it once I'd finished it. And sure enough, I joined the graduate scheme at Ernst & Young. And, as much as I loved the graduate scheme of there being 100 graduates, which was great, once the work started, I did curse him every day for making me do the chartered accountancy. But by the end, I did really appreciate it, because I'd done the case study. It opened up a lot of doors. And, I think of the 6 really close friends that I have from Ernst & Young. One went into private equity, one went into investment banking, one went into consultancy, as another who's like me in the CFO tech space, another that stayed in practice, but big multinational. So it opens a lot of doors. So I did appreciate it. And from there, how did I navigate into tech CFO? It was, the first step was into BBDO Europe, which was part of the Omnicom media conglomerate. And I was doing a commercial finance role, helping the CFOs of the agencies, drive growth and help them manage the business. Then I took on my first kind of P&L ownership role, where I took on an FD role at Pancentric, which is a digital marketing agency, quite small, about 50, 60 people, and built the finance function from the bottom up. And then from there, I knew I wanted to now take, from the digital agency model, move into the tech model. I got my first CFO role at SuperAwesome. I was there for 8 years, which was incredible. And now I'm doing fractional CFO work for sort of the early stage startup space, working for a company called Leveler, which is a B2B SaaS business. It does analytics and community management tech for Discord. Subu Connect, which does it's a B2B food marketplace platform, and a company called Novel, which is an audio podcasting business. And that's my journey.
Super. And tell us about your time at SuperAwesome. Obviously, fantastic journey. Took you to what is coveted by many employers and CFOs, a successful exit process. What did you learn in your time there?
I was very fortunate to have achieved a lot of success at SuperAwesome. It was an incredible experience. On that journey from scaling from 10 million to 100 million revenue and achieving an exit, you learn a lot. And also, it wasn't just the exit; it's the multiple. We effectively experienced the whole financial life cycle that you could experience within a business, bar an IPO. I arrived just after the Series A, where we got VC on board. We then did Series B, where we got private equity on board, Mayfair Equity Partners. We then got Series C, where it was a strategic investment. On board, we got venture debt. We then exited. Then we had time as a kind of, an independent within a multinational. How do you manage now being part of this huge business? And then finally, we did a management buyout, so that we became independent again. So that whole journey, there were so many things along the way that you learn. Obviously, building company value, navigating risk, navigating the right path, scaling a business. But if I was to call out the two things that probably surprised me that I would learn about, I suppose, the CFO role, it was probably about being a generalist. When I joined, you suddenly realize it's not just finance. You're partnering with the sales team super close. You're partnering with the marketing team super close, and the delivery teams. And also, if I think about the actual exit, that particular moment, you are there, during the due diligence, multiple stakeholders on the call, from investment bankers to solicitors to specialists in every single part of tax, to the professional services that are doing the financial DD, and there's you. And you don't know as much of them on their specialist skill set. But you do, I always call it like an expert generalist. you are deep in particular areas, but the real power is gluing it all together end to end.
Yeah.
So you know the business end to end. And so you're sparring with these people and you're doing okay. And so I think that for me is something that I learned a lot is, yes, you might have finance in your name, in your title, but you also have to partner with all these other parts of the business internally, but also all of these different stakeholders externally. The other thing I felt surprised me a bit was the fact I was such a tech, I was the operational tech expert. Our CTO at SuperAwesome used to say that I was the CTO of shadow tech, which I took as, you know, he obviously looked after our proprietary technology, that was our product, but I looked after the operational tech from the CRM to the marketing platform to the ERP, all the way through to the HR system, et cetera, and that surprised me, and because but I suppose someone has to own it, and if you're scaling from 10 to 100 million, if you don't have that tech in place and someone's not thinking about it, you're not able to get to 100 million, efficiently. So those are probably the two things I learned a lot. That landed the most with me were the fact you had to be a generalist, and you had to, I was the CTO of shadow tech.
Why was that important that you had that piece of the tech and the CTO didn't have that?
Well, I think there's a skill set where you need to think about operational efficiency, and you are thinking about the business and what the business needs from an operational perspective, not just from a product perspective, which is a CTO will think about.
Yeah.
So it starts with, how can we track our sales? How can we get the performance information we need on our marketing? How do we join all those things together? And that for me is not what the CTO should be doing. In a bigger company, there would be a kind of a FinOps type department or an IT department that would probably cover some of those things. But in a scale up startup, you don't have that luxury, and it made sense. I think a CFO can be different things to different people, and some people that wouldn't be their, it wouldn't be as tech fluent, perhaps. For me, it made sense, and so that's what I really enjoyed. And it made sense for me to do it because I had the right passion and skill set for it.
Yeah. So obviously it was a great outcome, and there's a lot in between the beginning of that journey and the exit. Tell us about a few of the harder moments in that time.
There were a lot of, there's always hard moments, but they tend to be good hard moments most of the time. Whether it's, like challenging. So whether it's, pivoting or trying to get capital in when you're running, a bit short, even though you've been planning for it for a while, somehow it always can be quite tight. But the two moments that I think of in particular, I'll call out. For example, the other day, I got asked a question. I was pitching for some work, and it was a panel of the chairman, the CEO, and two of the people from the investors. And one of the questions, the chairman, who'd been asking some really good questions, he said, "Tell me about a time that you've ever been flustered." I love that question. I love it because it's like an upgrade iteration of what your biggest weakness is, but it's an upgrade because it tackles the kind of human vulnerability element, but it also is testing whether you get flustered right now, because it's not a question you expect. Yeah. And I knew that was not lost on me when I was answering the question. I was like, that is a good question, and I know they're testing me right now. And actually, I asked, as honestly as I could, and I said, well, the thing is that one of the reasons I've loved working in tech is it's very high pressured, and I'm someone that's obsessed with flow. And when you're under pressure, you I managed to get a lot of flow. Like, instead of being flustered and, sort of getting nervous or short with people, I feel like you can channel it into being more productive. I feel like I can slow down time. But there are times when you can't do that. And I was honest and I said, look, there was this one time where I think of the hardest moment that I ever had was COVID had hit. We'd just signed, or it's about to sign the heads of terms with Epic to do the deal. And at the same time, the financial controller I had gone, and the interim financial controller, who was supposed to be sort of just supporting in the meantime, had also left. He'd had a personal problem. And I had my team going to me, what do we do? And normally, having been so solution-led in everything you do and be able to channel pressure into being more productive, I had no idea. I couldn't. And I said, I'm sorry, I've got nothing right now. And they looked at me and they were, yeah, we need to do something. We've got the audit coming and you've got the close to do. And they didn't know about the deal, but I also knew I've got a deal and I've got COVID. I'm going to have to replan everything now. The financial plan is now being shifted. And I went home and I metaphorically stuck my head in the sand. And I think I needed that. I just needed, like, you know what? I just want to forget about this right now. I don't want this problem to be a problem right now. And every time I tried to come up to surface to think about how I was going to solve it, I couldn't. And I walked the dog because COVID, you could walk the dog, and it was a long walk. And I came back and I suddenly thought, right, this is what I'm going to do. And I came in the next day, had a good sleep, and then finally action led. But that was when I got flustered. That was a wobble. I think the other moment was probably after we were buying back the business from Epic. I think anyone, when you go through a big round of redundancies, is hard. And when we were buying it back, we did a round of redundancies, which is also part of Epic's redundancies that they did at that time. That was hard because that was the first proper round I'd had at SuperAwesome, people that you work with a long time. And I think it was particularly hard because some people were coming on this super exciting journey, to become independent again, and others were being made redundant, and they were all getting the news on the same day. That was emotional because walking around the office was just it felt like a battlefield. Yeah, but you get through it. It's the right decision, and you come out the other side stronger for it. And the people who were made redundant are still part of the SuperAwesome alumni. They still see me at the drinks, but at the time it was hard. Yeah.
Just out of interest, in the interview scenario, when answering that question, did you resolve it with how you dealt with it, or did you just leave it as this was when I was flustered?
Well, I didn't say you just got me flustered and I'm now. I didn't say that, but it wasn't lost on me when I was answering that question. Because that would have been really honest. You've now flustered me. Great question. Yeah, I loved it. I'm gonna use that. At some point, I like it.
How has your perspective changed on finance leadership, moving from early stage to later stage companies?
I think there's a lot of overlapping qualities between a leader and an early stage and a late stage. I think there was something that you carry the whole way through, whether you even get to a multinational. I strongly believe in authenticity, the power of likability. So if you connect with your team, they connect with you. You will do everything to support them and make sure that they are helped and developed and added value, and they will run through walls for you, which is crucial whether in a small business or a bigger business. I think in a smaller business you're probably closer to the team because it's flatter, but I think it applies anywhere. That also, I think as a leader you need different tools. You need to be able to change gear. I'm a big believer in my main style is empowerment, giving someone the freedom to flourish, but you need to be able to change and pace set Sometimes you have to be more of a facilitator. Sometimes you have to be really hands-on. And you've just got to know the different scenarios to do that. It's a bit like a performance bike, right? If you only had one gear, which was your favorite gear, but then you went uphill, you would struggle. So it's a bit like that. So I think those are things that are consistent, but definitely what I find different from the kind of earlier stage, it's a flatter culture. You need not just you as a CFO being a generalist, but everyone in the team needs to be more generalist. Obviously when you get bigger, there's more hierarchy, so you probably don't see as much of what the more junior teams are doing, and they start becoming more siloed in terms of specialisms. And we noticed that when we joined Epic, we were trying to be shoehorned into, are you in the financial planning analysis team, or are you in the financial control team, are you in tax? And I said, well, our team's not split like that. They kind of cover all of it to an extent. So yeah, that involves different type of leadership than being a leader of a specialist team. So those are the things I would probably note the most. Obviously, when you get a leader to a $200 million business, you can be much more zoomed out as well. A CFO of a 200 million revenue business will have a VP of finance and a head of tax and a head of fintech and FinOps. You just don't have that luxury in a smaller. So you've got to be able to get a bit more scrappy at times. But those are probably the key differences in evolution.
So if you spend any time at all on LinkedIn or other media sort of finance related things, we get told day in, day out the role of the CFO has changed. Probably fed up of hearing about that, to be honest. And if you follow the Secret CFO at all, he's kind of like,
he's great.
That happened 15, 20 years ago. It's not changed. It's been a strategic business partner for a long time now. But what is your take on what a modern CFO is?
I agree. It hasn't really changed in with the core responsibilities. It's still about value creation and managing risk and long-term planning, and you've got to be strategic and you've got to be focused on the business and data-driven. But what I think has changed is two things. One, the environment has changed. There's more, how do you manage COVID? How do you manage inflation, interest increases? How do you manage artificial intelligence and the proliferation of data and BI? So it's applying those same core skills to a changing environment. I said there about being a CTO of shadow tech. I don't think that was probably a thing 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe. So yeah, you still have to, it's still about being data driven, but the data driven now is you can build a whole BI tech stack. Whereas before was, there's probably not so much big data. So that's probably a big difference. The other thing is, so when I've got two kids, and I remember reading this book because it was the first book I read since having kids on holiday, right? I used to, pre-kids, I don't know if you're sitting around the pool and you can read a book, it's like, this is great. I've got peace, I'm jumping in the pool.
We didn't know it at the time, but...
yeah. And then kids come along and you just don't have that. And you're constantly watching out that, where's my kid? Has he got a nappy on? Is he going to do something silly? And I was in Bali at the time, and my kids were a bit older, and they're in the pool, and they were self-sufficient. I read this book called A Whole New Mind. And The Whole New Mind, the premise of it was that you have your left brain, which is more logical, analytical, literal, and then the right brain, which is creative, design, empathy, and you're kind of more predominant on one or the other. And with leaving the information age, where accountants, lawyers, doctors, MBA students, they are all predominantly more left brain thinkers, and they're the ones who kind of ruled the world. And now moving into the conceptual age, it's more about being a right brain thinker for three reasons. Partly, artificial intelligence is going to do a lot of that left brain thinking. Offshoring is already doing some of that left brain work. And design has become ridiculously important. If you even the simplest commodity of loo roll, if you take like the Who Gives a Crap brand, it's beautifully designed, and I don't know if you use it, but like it's these lovely, beautiful loo rolls that you stack up in your bathroom. Even a toaster's got to look good now. It can't just be functional. Yeah. So for those three reasons, you've got to be more focused on design. So I'm obsessed with storytelling. Like, I love storytelling, not just at home, but like trying to tell the right story with numbers at work. And I'm obsessed with design to the point that if my team at SuperAwesome, when they presented numbers and they weren't, I actually feel pain when I see numbers that are not, formatted or not designed the right way or not presented the right way, because you've done all the work, you've got the numbers, but you've just not, you've finished on the way it looks and then the way you give the narrative to tell the story. So that, I think, is a modern CFO that perhaps wasn't 20 years ago, is you have to be more about storytelling and you have to think about design, because that's what makes the difference with all of those AI technologies, and a lot of the systems are doing the work for you on that front.
You touched on the BI stack there for a moment. Tell us a bit more about that. What does that mean to you in 2025?
Yeah, so I suppose linked to the shadow tech side of things, the business intelligence tech stack was kind of linked to that. And I'm a believer that, when it comes to, you want to tell the right story at the board, exec, leadership level. You also want to empower all of the leaders and execs with, and the wider business with intelligence in order, to basically enable insight to be at the heart of every decision, so that you make better decisions, so that you get scalable growth. So if you get your business intelligence right, you enable building value in the business, because people have the right information and insight to take action quickly. So I remember the first time at SuperAwesome when, that started me on my journey of like being obsessed with business intelligence, because when we joined, the CRM was in a spreadsheet. We didn't have any business intelligence tech stack. And then, that first time we plugged a business intelligence tool into a spreadsheet, and you're like, oh my God, I can see really amazing future here. I had a vision for what that could mean. And well, if you got this and you got a data lake, and then you were able to connect all your systems to it and then empower everyone with dashboards. And so there's live information throughout the month, as well as incredible information to then present at those formal meetings. This is really powerful. So I some people think that the BI tech stack shouldn't sit with finance, but I do, because I think you're the one often telling the financial narrative, at the board level. So you should be the ones also making sure that information from a financial perspective and the non-financial metrics, right, sales and marketing, you want to make sure all those are joined up and there's one point of truth. And that involves a lot of plumbing work, right? And we had a BI consultancy that helped us with that. But yeah, I believe that is a very powerful tool in the world today, that if you get it right, you empower everyone with the right intelligence to make decisions, but you also get, in particular, the story at the board and exec level, right, which is where a lot of the big strategic decisions are made.
And clearly some of these tools have AI capability in them now, but I'm actually interested, where does some of that BI stuff actually now meet LLM and Chat GPT, and using bits and pieces of those things to create other stories? And obviously you've got to be careful with these things because they hallucinate. But have you played with that?
So I've played a little bit with artificial intelligence. I think everyone right now should be experimenting, and experimenting on a personal level. So whether it's with your ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, all of those, you should be trying to see how you can use it to improve the way, give you some efficiencies. I really like Notebook LM. So that's a Gemini product where you basically create a walled garden for a particular client, right? Or a particular project that you're working on, and you upload PDFs, slide decks, Google Docs, and then you can ask it questions, and it's all related to the stuff that's in there. So if you quickly have to go, oh, I forgot what that was, you can just prompt it, and it spits out and it sends you the link to where it was, which is really helpful. But also you can turn it into a podcast. So if you ask it a question, you turn it into a podcast. And so then when you're on the road, I need an update on this client, and then turn it into a podcast. And then when I'm walking to the client, it's giving me the update, and I'm not having to read, because I don't want to read all the time. Or I'm on the road anyway, so I can't read. So I really like that, and I'm experimenting with it. I'm also, occasionally if you're building a financial model or something, you can go, oh God, can you help me do this code? And it builds a code for you, and you pop it in there, and it just saves you a bit of time. But I think on a bigger scale, it's not quite ready from a roll it out to join up systems. Like eventually in 10 years, I think it's going to be ready where it's taking an invoice, it's posting it, you're cutting out the need for certain heads in the finance department, and across other departments. It's not ready yet, but I want to be close to it, so that when it's ready, you can adopt it very quickly. That's probably why I'm at with it. But I think the more you can do, going to talks, speaking to consultants, being prepared, and at least experimenting on a smaller scale now, then you'll be ready to adopt it when it is super powerful.
The future sort of startup, scale up finance org, I've seen a few things about what this could look like in not the too distant future, where it could look like you have a CFO and you might have one other, or maybe an FC and a head of FP&A potentially on the scale, and then everything else below that is an agent of some description.
I think there'll be a lot of. I think the future org structure will be a CFO managing a couple of specialists that are managing AI agents at a medium-sized business. I think in a smaller business, it will just be a CFO and AI agents, right? So for me in the fractional CFO space, I'm already thinking about, well, what does scaling this look like? And right now, it probably looks like taking on, a person, but that might be different in 10 years. It might be taking on a load of commoditizing, productizing a AI as a team that you can go into each business and set up their, I suppose, infrastructure. But it's scary, but also exciting. I'm more. The thing that I'm fearful of is, I know people will always question, oh no, it's every shift in technology creates more jobs than it takes away. I'm not so sure on this. I'm not. I don't know. I'm probably, and I think people could argue the death out of. I know that's still going to be the case here. I don't know. I think there's going to be serious policy making around when unemployment goes up to higher levels, how we deal with that.
Yeah, certainly the Godfather of AI podcast. I don't know if you listened to that one the other day. Yeah, he was sort of fairly on the side of, I think there's going to be
Is that
less
Diary of a
jobs.
CEO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was definitely on the side
There's
of
definitely
less
some
jobs.
scaremongering going around. But yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I think there's no point getting worried about it. You've just got to just be ready and make sure you're on the right side of it.
Learn a trade on the side.
Yeah, exactly. Become a plumber, right?
That's what he said.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
I speak to a lot of people who are in, let's call them more traditional businesses in finance roles, who, for whatever reason, it's purpose, it's not wanting corporate bureaucracy, etc. The idea of becoming a CFO in a startup sounds great. From your perspective, having been both sides of that, what are the key differences from sort of being a senior finance person in a traditional business versus a startup or fast-moving tech company?
I think there's, again, the same overlapping qualities that you would expect from a CFO, whether it's small or big. Value creation, risk management, long-term planning. I think the main difference is probably that in an earlier stage, you have to be able to zoom in and zoom out. 1 minute, it depends how early we're talking, but if you've got to be able to get at the board level, tell a story, you've got to be able to help raise finance, you've got to be able to manage investors. But at the same time, sometimes you've got to get into the plumbing of why something's not working. And in a much bigger organization, you would have a team to do that. So I think that's the main difference, really. But obviously, whether you're in a traditional business anyway, you're probably more focused on profitability at that point. You're probably slower growth, whereas in an earlier stage, you're more focused on growth metrics and customer lifetime value and customer acquisition costs and unit economics. And although that is still important in traditional business, there's a bit more of a focus on margin. These days, even profitability on the bottom line is important for tech startups, but it's still, there is an understanding that you can raise money and burn money in the right scenario to get growth, and you just wouldn't see that so much in a traditional business or a large organization. Certainly not in a listed business is completely different. There's a short-term need there where you've got to have the earnings call and make sure you deliver on numbers. You can definitely be a bit more long-term from an earlier stage, which is privately owned. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I definitely prefer the life in a kind of the startup scale-up space.
Have you found that there's been a lot of tension between the need for structure in startup scale-up environment, but also trying to maintain agility and moving quickly and iterating?
I think so. I mean, when I look at my time at SuperAwesome, one of the things I found, I think I was quite prepared for the CFO role because I'd done a strategic FD role at Pancentric. I was on the board. I was on the exec team. So I kind of knew what to expect from that perspective. What did, surprise me was suddenly you're going into a tech company whereas Pancentric we were growing 15 to 20% a year. SuperAwesome, you're growing 50% plus a year and raising money. And so the pace of it was so quick that you realize every day it's moving and changing. So I think you do need that structure. You do need a budget. You do need a plan. You need something to work towards. You need something to hold you to account. But you also need that flexibility, that agility to be able to change as things move. Acquisition, targets, new products, new regions, pivots. And sometimes that means, okay, that plan is now an old plan. We need to replan. So I don't like the idea of having zero structure. That will fall apart. You do need some structure. Planning, budgets, organization, hiring plans, all of these things. But you just need to know that in a fast-paced environment, it's going to change and you shouldn't be rigid to change. Right? If you've suddenly got to hire a few new people because we're going off over here, you've got to do that. And that's part and parcel of being a CFO. You've got to make that work. But yeah, it's the right balance of a foundation of structure, but with the ability to be agile and dynamic on top of that.
I don't think there's any exact science because there's a lot of variables involved in terms of how fast the company's growing, funding, etc. But in your experience, when is the right time for a startup to hire a CFO?
I think all companies that I've ever worked with hired a CFO too late. I think because a lot of the CFOs, when you join, you end up unwinding a lot of the mistakes that were made by either having a junior finance team or no finance team at all, and potentially doing it in-house or outsourcing it. So for me, you need to have some kind of CFO support in the early stages. But what I've also seen is when you do get that, and obviously a startup can't afford a full-time CFO, and they don't need a full-time CFO. So they probably want to look for something on a fractional perspective. But what I've found is that often the engagement of a fractional CFO is done the wrong way. So often they think, well, a fractional CFO, we should do 2 days a month or something. And that is actually not enough time to solve whatever problems there are. I think the engagement strategy should be, and this is how it works with all my clients, is you take a client on, you do it as a full-time project to an extent. And then once you've solved a few of the problems and you've got them set up, then you can move it to a slightly less regular, once or twice a month basis. Then you take on your new project of a new client, solve a lot of their problems, and then move it to a regular cadence. So there's quite a nice a way to approach it, because you very quickly solve the problem and then you help maintain it and iterate it, and you're there giving the board narrative and helping them tell the right story. And and at some point in the future, they might not have another project down the road. But that's, for me, how you overcome the problem of not being able to afford a CFO, but be able to get it on a fractional basis. If you're going to do it fractional, you've got to do it the right way. Solve the problems, then go to 1 or 2 days a month. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to... You can't really do that much in 2 days a month. Certainly not quick enough.
What are the common mistakes that you see that founders have made sort of early stages before you arrive from a finance perspective?
Other than hiring a CFO a bit late. I think, well, I suppose the thing that a founder can do wrong is not partner enough with the exec team. So you've taken on an exec team and you've hired these experts in their particular field. Partner with them, collaborate with them, let them, empower them to, show you what they can do to add value in their particular area. I think that's a key part. You've got to empower the exec team, or not being honest with people, right? If they're, one of the best, I reported into an MD in one of my jobs, and I really liked the fact he was super direct. You always knew where you stood, and as a result, you always got better because you knew exactly what you were not, what were you not doing right. And when you did get feedback, which was positive, it felt so good because it meant a lot. So I think, honesty, partnering with the exec team.
Yeah.
I do think as well that probably the best founders as well are very fluent in the numbers. So they often have an investor mindset. So the same way they take care about what they invest in from a third party perspective, they also, as a result, really care about how they invest in their own business. So they're not just a product visionary, they're also fluent in their numbers.
Yeah.
They're not just market focused, they're also understand their unit economics. So I think that's a key a key trait that I've seen in a great founder is they're not just a sales, market facing product person. They also have a fluency in the numbers, but empower a finance person to help them partner them along that journey. But they aren't just like, oh, that's numbers. That's your world. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
They should care because at the end of the day, that's going to help you raise money. It's going to help you on our journey of being successful.
Yeah. So you've obviously been through some high pressure, high stakes moments in the journey so far. How have you generally balanced that with life and family and keeping healthy, etc.?
I think, well, the flow part, I always feel with the pressures of startup life, I do feel like I can channel that energy quite well anyway, and I really think it suits me. But yeah, there were times where I definitely worked too hard. Often when you first take on a job, and I remember whether it's new clients I take on now or starting SuperAwesome for the first time, it's probably when you work the most because you're building from the bottom up. It's not like there's a seat being kept warm for you in a lot of these earlier stage businesses. Often you might be the first CFO hire. And so there's a lot of unwinding of problems to do. And you end up working crazy hours to try and get to a point where it's a bit more steady state. Also, I can think of there was a time during the due diligence where I think I worked 2 days straight through the night, trying to get something out which was absolutely necessary. And I look back at that and I think, oh God, that now I know a lot more about the importance of sleep. I think why didn't you just push back? But it was coming from the investment bank and said we need it now, and I was like, okay. So in hindsight, I look back at some of those times and I go, what could you have done differently? And I think now, I think sleep, make sure you get enough sleep.
Yeah.
Make sure I love running. So I get out and run in it. I noticed myself doing that a lot during the due diligence because it was during COVID as well. So you couldn't really go outside, but you could run and you'd have because you'd be working through the night, you'd be in meetings through the night, and you'd find a quick hour and a half slot and go and run, clear the head. And it fixes you straight away. Spending time with the family, and living your passions as well. Going to cricket tonight, and that's always going to be on the top of my list. But all of those things, I think, keep you sane when you're working really hard. But at the same time, what is working when you're passionate about what you do and you love what you do, you also get energized by that as well. It's not. I think for me, the line between job and recreation is pretty blurred. But yeah, I appreciate it's still, you need time with the family and you need to live your passions, you need to exercise, all of that. But sleep's my new number one thing this year. That's my New Year's resolution. I was like, I've got to sleep more.
Yeah. Super. The closing bit for today, based on what you know now, I think we have some people who listen to this who aspire to be a CFO at some point. Any advice for aspiring CFOs?
I think be curious. Always be questioning, why are we doing that? What's out there? What's artificial intelligence doing? What's it going to be? How can we challenge the status quo? I think curiosity is probably one of the key traits of a CFO. Be prepared to fail. Fail fast, learn faster. Our CEO at SuperAwesome, Dylan Collins, I remember him saying in a presentation once, I don't think we fail enough. And out of context, that sounds weird, but what he means is we're market leaders, we're disruptors. We have to be trying things that haven't been done before, and you never try and innovate and sort of create, all these things are filled with scientific uncertainty. We've got to break stuff to know what not to do and therefore push us in the direction of what we should do. And so I'm a big believer in that. And I think that needs to be taught at the school level. I think sometimes it's all about, I felt like I had to unlearn a lot of things from school where it's always got to pass, you've got to succeed, you've got to get, A's and first and et cetera, and actually that is important. You need to learn, but also you need to prepare to fail. And I think some people, they aren't prepared to fail, and so they don't try things, and therefore they struggle in the tech CFO space. And I think the third thing I'd say is back to that book I read about, A Whole New Mind. You've got to be a storyteller. You've got to be thinking about the design of not just, the numbers that you present, but also the user experience of the tech that you put in place. I think that is going to make a big difference. Just being a numbers guy is not going to be enough.
Yeah.
You need to be able to empathize. You need to be able to hold court. You need to be able to tell a story and get people on side. You need to be a partner with people, but also you've got to be able to, you're a designer. And I know that might be weird to some people. It's like, no, I build a spreadsheet. Yeah, well, you're designing a spreadsheet. You're designing a model. You're designing a deck of which to present. So don't just think because you don't have designer in your title, you aren't a designer. So yeah.
Tom, thank you very much. Enjoy the cricket. Slightly different cricket to one I'm about to watch, but
I'm sure it will be enjoyable. There'll be a beer in hand in probably both cases. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me.